A constitutional law expert has urged South Africans to maintain their perspective regarding any glitches that may occur during this election. In a recent article for the Daily Maverick, Professor has pointed out that isolated issues and errors should not affect the overall freeness and fairness of the election or the validity of the result. Let's speak to Professor Pierre de Vos now, who joins us on the line. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Perhaps I should ask why you felt the need to actually pen this piece, days before this election. Is there something that bothered you particularly?
Yes, so partly I remember previous elections where some events happen, say on election day, the polling booth opens late or a ballot box is found somewhere, and people overreact and say, oh my goodness, there's evidence that the whole election is rigged. This election may be more so because there are more politicians who are trying to discredit the IEC and fighting with it. There's Mr. Zuma obviously have a bone to pick with the IEC because they interpreted the constitution correctly, as it turned out, to the effect that he cannot stand for a National Assembly election. And so there is, in this sort of high pressure environment, there is a tendency for people to assume the worst without knowing enough about the system to understand that it's actually not so easy to rig the election.
Professor de Vos, you talk about the safeguards and particularly the role of party agents. I mean, what does that bring? It means they watch every single step of the way and they can blow the whistle or alert the WhatsApp group if there's a problem.
Yes, so they are there. Every party who's contesting the election can have two party agents. They observe when the polling booth opened, that the materials are there, that the ballot boxes are empty. They can check every decision about allowing whoever to vote. They are there when the votes are counted. They can check that it's done properly. The results are announced there publicly and to them, and then it's sent to the IEC where there are more agents checking. And so if there's any discrepancy, if somebody tries to stuff the ballot box at a specific polling station, this is going to be discovered. So while cheating of some kind is not impossible, it's very difficult to get away with large-scale cheating that will affect the results because of party agents, at least. Of course, there are other potential problems, but it is not, the main problem is not that there is going to be huge cheating in the election.
Well, Prof, I mean, and this is a point you make in your piece. Larger political parties have previously, accepted the final results of the election, even after questioning the impartiality. They would have questioned the impartiality of the IEC or the veracity of some of the results. Now, at a time when there's a lot of misinformation, and we've seen a growing tendency among certain political players to, repeat the lie, even when the truth, says the opposite. I mean, how? Presumably in the hope that, the lie will become the truth. But how do we handle that situation?
Well, as the United States shows, where Mr. Donald Trump and almost half of the population still believe that he won the election despite losing it, it's very difficult to challenge and to disprove lies deliberately spread. For me, the important thing is, and what is very important for the IEC, is to be very transparent. Whenever there's a problem, to be very clear exactly what happened, so that at least people who act in good faith can understand how serious is it, can see that the IEC is trying to fix it if there is a problem, and so forth. But there is a huge problem with social media, WhatsApp groups, and so on. People share many things that are clearly false, and people believe it. I really don't know how to really resolve this problem.
One of the things that happens, Professor, and you'll have watched this, and I think we all have, is that there can be a dispute. And then we have dispute mechanisms. So you have an electoral court. You actually have legal people, and their job's to be on standby during this time. How important is that sort of dispute in a resolution mechanism?
Yes, so it's very important that the party agents at the polling station can dispute everything. If they're not happy with the ruling of the presiding officer, they can appeal to the IEC, who then has to resolve it. They have to resolve all the problems as far as they can before they announce the final results within 7 days. Then you can take the case to the electoral court, and ultimately you can challenge the freeness and fairness of the whole election in the Constitutional Court. Which is very important because if there really a big train smash happens, the IEC collapses or whatever, there are always mechanisms down the road. And what will make it easier to take a case to the Electoral Commission or to the Constitutional Court is that the system requires there's always a paper trail. There are party agents who can confirm or deny that something happened or didn't happen. So it's not going to be something that is difficult to go to the court with, and the court will say, bring us your evidence. If there is, it has been serious problems, the evidence will be there.
Now, if, Prof, as you say, there are signs that the IEC, on the other hand, is perhaps not as administratively efficient as it once was. And on the other hand, you also have new players, right? And who have demonstrated perhaps more than others that indeed electioneering brings out some of the worst in many South Africans. Can we then vouch for the resilience of the dispute resolution mechanisms you're talking about?
Well, I believe that maybe some people will disagree with me, but I believe that the IEC as an institution with the commissioners that are elected or selected, appointed through a complicated process that is at least the candidates that qualified to be elected are selected by the Chief Justice, the Public Protector, the head of the Human Rights Commission, and so on. So they do have I think the integrity and the impartiality to try and resolve the problems amicably. And then there are the other mechanisms like the courts. Whether individuals or a party accepts this, and when it is done in good faith, one cannot. That is, I cannot comment on that, and we don't know what will happen. Yes, but I do think that the system is more or less resilient. The big concern is logistical, that on Wednesday, because there's an extra ballot paper this time around, because you have to vote at the polling station where you're registered, which is change in the law, that there will be really very bad logistical problems, nothing to do with cheating. And that will harm the IEC's image in the eyes of normal people and the trust. I agree with that, so I'm worried about that. But the actual resolving of the disputes, I am not particularly concerned about, because it looks like the institution is strong enough to deal with that.
Professor de Vos, whenever this conversation comes up, I'm always reminded of what Judge Johan Krichler says. He was the first person who ran our first election. He always says, in a system of proportional representation, you can't steal an election. And the reason is, if you look at, for example, what happened in the United States, in Georgia, just a few thousand votes could have swung it either way because of their electoral system. The same could happen in several other places. If you win one province or one area or whatever, you win. In our system, you would need probably 2 million votes, one way or another, at the very least, I mean, to change the outcome of an election. And so the point I'm making is that the very nature of the system, mathematically, I think Judge Krichler, I'm not supposed to give an opinion, but I'm sure he's right, there's just no way to do it on a large scale.
Yeah. So that is true. So it is really difficult to, how many votes will be cast? 17 or 18 million people will cast their ballots, 3 different ballots. And so while if you're really good, you might get away with cheating that is going to make 1 seat difference. But more than that, as you point out, will be very difficult because the whole country is in effect it's one constituency, and all the parties compete nationally for those 400 seats in one go. In a complicated system, but nevertheless. So that makes it, what happens in an individual polling station less important because you're not electing a person from that polling station to represent you in Parliament. Yes, so I agree with Justice Krichler on that point as well.
So as you will be walking down to your voting station at the Seapoint Fisheries Garage on Wednesday, Prof, with the words of Judge Albie Sachs in your mind when he said, the vote of each and every citizen is a badge of dignity and of personhood. Quite literally, it says that everybody counts. Do you think that, or I'm sure you would wish that would be the overriding thinking or concern and thought of every South African come Wednesday, isn't it?
Yes, so I'm maybe old-fashioned, but I really believe that there's something magical about voting. I'm still old enough to remember 1994 and the feeling of first fear because we didn't know what was going to happen and whether the right-wingers will demolish the whole thing. And then euphoria, seeing also people who couldn't vote before, who can vote now. Some people will choose not to, of course, vote. But for me, I think it's important for us to remember that despite the political differences, we're all going out to vote. We're all in the same country. We're all citizens of the country. And there's something special about that act itself.
Professor Pierre de Vos, thank you very much indeed. Getting us in the vibe a little there for you, I think, ahead of the vote on Wednesday. Thank you, Professor Pierre de Vos, who's a Professor of Constitutional Law at UCT.